Sira Akafor counted the air the way her grandmother had counted money. Carefully, with both hands, like it could slip away if she stopped paying attention. 6 hours and 14 minutes. That was what the pod's atmosphere monitor said when she checked it the third time in 20 minutes. She had to stop checking. There were 11 of them in a pod rated for 6, the scrubber running at capacity, and the math was simple. More bodies, faster cycle, smaller number. Checking did not change the math. 6 hours and 11 minutes now. The pod was a Venn Transit Standard Emergency Module, the kind bolted to the exterior of every coalition-certified merchant hauler in good standing. Venn's passage had been in good standing. It had been a clean ship, a careful ship, with a quarterly maintenance record that Sira had personally cross-checked when she signed on as junior deck rating 3 months ago. She was 19 years old and thorough in the way that young people are thorough when they want to prove something. The drive coil rupture had not cared about the maintenance record. It had happened fast. The port coil assembly had blown during the final transit burn, not a full breach, but enough to knock the primary power grid offline and crack the hull at junction frame 7. Captain Elio had called abandoned ship in a voice so flat and certain that Sira had been halfway to the pod before she processed the words. She grabbed 3 people by their collar rings on the way Davari merchant clerk Vasith, frozen in the corridor staring at alarm lights, and 2 Keshari engineers, Reth and Sath, sprinting in the wrong direction. She redirected them with her hands without slowing down. There were 11 of them in the pod when it blew clear of the passage. Sira, Captain Elio, First Officer Chen, 3 more humans from the crew, and 5 passengers Vasith, and 4 more Davari and Keshari who had made it to the pod bays. Not everyone had. Nobody talked about that, not yet. What they talked about, in the first 20 minutes after the pod cleared the debris field and set its beacon running, was the beacon. It's broadcasting on the standard coalition emergency band, First Officer Chen said. She was 43 compact, and she had been running systems checks with the methodical calm of someone who had prepared for this before. Channel 19 Delta, Sector 11 Alpha encoding because that's where we were filed to be. She paused. That's not where we are. The drive coil blast had thrown them well off course. The pod's navigation unit placed them in Sector 9, Gamma, 2 sectors removed from their logged position, in a stretch of space that was neither on their filed route nor anywhere near Sector 11 Alpha's coalition patrol coverage. Who covers 9 Gamma? Captain Elio asked. Chen did not answer immediately. That was its own kind of answer. Vasith, the Davari clerk, spoke from the far corner of the pod. His translator implant rendered his clicking speech into flat, precise standard. Sector 9 Gamma is an Earth border corridor. Earth Patrol runs it. They are not part of the Coalition Rescue Framework. He stopped. Our beacon is encoding for 11 Alpha. Earth Patrol is not listening for 11 Alpha signals. Silence in the pod. Sira counted bodies without moving her eyes. 11 faces, 11 different shapes of the same expression, calculating, doing the math, not liking the answer. I can reroute the beacon encoding, Sira said. Everyone looked at her. She was the youngest person in the pod by at least 6 years. She had been a junior deck rating for 3 months. She was aware of both of these facts and aware that they were looking at her because of them, or possibly despite them. She kept her voice level. The beacon module has a manual encoding override. It's in the maintenance access panel. She pointed at the panel on the port bulkhead. I cross-checked this pod's systems when I came aboard. The override lets you change the sector encoding in the beacon header without interrupting the broadcast signal. If I change it from 11 Alpha to 9 Gamma, the signal will be formatted correctly for any receiver in this sector. She met Vasith's eyes across the pod, including Earth Patrol. Vasith's skin membranes flickered the Davari equivalent of a raised eyebrow. You know that Earth Patrol will respond to a coalition merchant distress signal. No, Sira said honestly, I don't know that. But our air is at 6 hours and 8 minutes and I am out of better options. So I am going to change the encoding and we are going to find out. She did not wait for consensus. She opened the maintenance panel. The override was not complicated: 3 toggles, 1 frequency selector, 1 confirmation switch. The pod's documentation described the process in 11 steps. Sierra had read the documentation during her first week aboard the Passage, out of habit, because she read everything. She completed the process in 40 seconds, and the beacon header shifted to Sector 9 Gamma encoding without a gap in the transmission cycle. "Done," she said. She closed the panel and turned around. First Officer Chen was watching her, with an expression she couldn't read. Captain Aliyu had his eyes on the navigation display. Reth was watching the atmosphere monitor, the same compulsive checking that did nothing useful. "Now we wait," Sierra said. They waited for 2 hours and 19 minutes. During that time, the atmosphere monitor ticked down to 3 hours and 52 minutes of remaining air. Sierra checked it less often than she wanted to, only every 20 minutes. Between checks, she talked. She talked because the pod was small, and the silence was the kind that calcified 11 people in a tight space, starting to calculate individually instead of collectively, starting to go to the dark places that people went when they had nothing to do but think. She had seen it happen in training simulations, that slow fracture of group coherence under sustained stress. She could not manufacture activity, but she could manufacture conversation. She asked Vasith about the Davari trading lanes in the 9 Gamma region. He explained them with the precise detail of someone grateful to have something to say. She asked Reth about the drive coil failure mechanics. Reth was an engineer, and engineers processed fear through problems within 20 minutes. Sath and Harlow had joined in, all 3 working through a theoretical post-mortem, with the focused energy of people who had found a useful way to exist. At 2 hours and 11 minutes, Vasith said, "You are doing this deliberately." Sierra looked at him. "Yes. You are keeping us occupied so we do not fixate on the air clock." "Yes." His skin membranes flickered again. The Davari expression she had learned meant the closest thing to respect. "You are 19 years old." 20 and 3 months, she said. He was quiet for a moment. "Your beacon override. I did not believe it would be effective. I still am not certain it will be effective." "I know," she said. "I wasn't certain either." "Then why did you do it without hesitation?" She thought about that. The atmosphere monitor read 3 hours and 41 minutes. Because doing the uncertain thing was better than doing nothing, and I knew how to do it, and I was the one who knew how to do it. She looked at the monitor. "That's usually enough reason." Vasith made a sound that his translator rendered as nothing, a subvocal click with no standard equivalent. Not dismissal and not agreement. The sound of a prior belief being quietly revised. At 2 hours and 19 minutes, the pod's emergency receiver lit. It was not a hail. It was an acknowledgement ping. A formatted response burst on the Sector 9 Gamma emergency band, carrying a transponder tag she had to query the pod's database to read. The database returned the ID in 4 seconds. Earth Patrol Group 7, Corvette designation EPS Caro with attendant vessels. Sierra read the attendant vessel list. Then she read it again, because the first reading had not seemed right. Attendant vessels: EPS Caro Patrol Corvette, EPS Halland Patrol Tender, EPS Voss Supply Tender, EMS Cairn Earth Hospital Frigate. 4 ships. Earth Patrol Group 7 was a convoy formation, currently transiting Sector 9 Gamma on scheduled patrol rotation. The corvette's acknowledgement read, "Signal received, Sector 9 Gamma encoding confirmed, location acquired, ETA 47 minutes. 47 minutes. The atmosphere monitor read 3 hours and 39 minutes. They had time to spare. Sierra sat with that for a moment. Then she read the response aloud. The pod went quiet in a different way than it had been quiet before, not the calcifying silence of fear and calculation. Something else, the specific, complicated quiet of people who had been certain of one outcome and had just encountered a different one. 4 ships, First Officer Chen said. 4 ships, Sierra confirmed. We sent one distress signal, Captain Aleo said. His voice had a careful quality. Misaddressed, rerouted manually, to a patrol group we had no prior relationship with in a sector we weren't supposed to be in. Yes, and they are sending 4 ships. The hospital frigate is part of the patrol group, Sierra said. Standard convoy configuration, but yes, 4 ships. Reth said something in his own language without activating his translator implant. Sath replied in the same language with what sounded like agreement. Vaseth was watching the receiver display. His skin membranes were very still. I know Earth Patrol Group 7's transponder. I have filed cargo declarations through this corridor 3 times this year. I have seen it on the approach scans. He paused. I did not believe they would answer a coalition beacon. Why not? Sierra asked. Because we are not their jurisdiction. Because our beacon was misformatted for this sector. Because coalition emergency protocol does not require a response from non-coalition patrol groups. He stopped. Because I did not think they would consider it their problem. The receiver lit again, a direct voice channel. When Sierra opened it, the voice on the other end was unhurried, professional, carrying the mild accent of someone from the Earth orbital stations. Pod on 9 Gamma emergency. This is Lieutenant Commander Adiz Morrow, EPS Caro. We have your location pinned. 43 minutes out now, you're going to be fine. We're transmitting an atmospheric management protocol on this channel. Follow it and you'll have margin to spare. How many aboard? 11, Sierra said. Pod rated for 6. A brief pause. Understood, waking our medical team now. Anyone injured? No critical injuries. 1 passenger has a respiratory condition, distress from the crowding. She's stable. Copy. EMS Cairn has a pulmonologist and a full respiratory suite. We'll prioritize her for the first transfer. A slight pause. Good work rerouting that beacon, whoever handled it. Your 9 Gamma encoding was clean. Sierra felt First Officer Chen looking at her. She did not look back. Thank you, Commander. 42 minutes, sit tight. The channel stayed open, not for conversation, just as a presence, a confirmation that the line existed. Sierra left it running and looked at the 11 faces around her, and she found Vaseth watching her with that still, considering expression the Davari used when they were revising their understanding of something. I am going to find it very difficult, he said, to explain this in my cargo declarations. File it as standard emergency response, Sierra said. The forms do not have a category for 4 ships, responding to a misfiled signal from a pod in the wrong sector. Then file it as miscellaneous. Vaseth's skin membranes rippled slowly. The full-spectrum version, the one she had come to understand, meant something she could only approximate in standard as wonder at a thing that should not be possible and demonstrably was. Miscellaneous, he said. Yes, perhaps that is the correct category. The EPS Caro came in at 41 minutes, 2 ahead of schedule, running its approach lights in the standard Earth pattern, 3 long pulses, then a continuous guide beam that filled the pod's small porthole with a clean white bar. The Hallen and Voss settled into flanking positions, and the EMS Cairn moved to port of the corvette with the unhurried precision of a ship that had run this maneuver many times before. The docking collar locked on with a solid clunk that Sierra felt in her back teeth. The hatch cycled. The first person through was a medic, young, dark uniformed, carrying a portable atmosphere kit, already moving with the economy of someone who had been fully briefed during transit. She went straight to the Keshari passenger with the respiratory condition without being directed. Commander Morrow had transmitted the passenger manifest during the approach run. The medical team had prepared. The second person through was a lieutenant with a transfer manifest and a thermal blanket. "Sira Akafar," he said, reading from it. She raised her hand. He handed her the blanket. "Commander Morrow wants a debrief on the beacon reroute when you're clear of medical. We're updating response protocols for misencoded signals in 9 Gamma, and she wants your procedure on record." He photographed the maintenance panel on the port bulkhead with a handheld scanner, then moved on, because there were 10 more people to process. She moved toward the hatch. Behind her, she could hear Vasith speaking to one of the Caro crew in careful standard, explaining the Sector 9 Gamma Transit Corridor registration system with precise, grateful detail, the tone of someone who had found a useful thing to say. The crew member was listening without interrupting, asking the occasional careful question. The docking collar was wide enough for 2 people side by side. Sira stepped through into the lit corridor of the EPS Caro, which smelled of recycled air, and something faintly industrial and entirely different from the close, stale warmth of the pod. She stood there for a moment with the thermal blanket around her shoulders and breathed. Full air, clean scrubbers, 4 ships worth of capacity for 11 people who had not been on anyone's schedule. She had changed 3 toggles, 1 frequency selector, and 1 confirmation switch. She had done it because she knew how, and the situation required it, and she was the one who knew how, and there had been no better reason needed than that. Commander Morrow was waiting at the end of the corridor, tall, measured, with the look of someone who had already stopped at a dozen things before this and would stop at a dozen more after. She extended her hand and Sira shook it. "Good work," Morrow said simply. "Thank you for coming," Sira said. "I wasn't certain you would." Morrow looked at her with the mild surprise of someone who genuinely did not understand the premise of the uncertainty. "You were in the sector. You broadcast on the emergency band. Your signal was coherent." She said each thing as though it were part of a straightforward equation. "We were always going to come." Sira nodded once. Then she followed the medic down the corridor toward the cairn's transfer bay, where there was a respiratory suite and a pulmonologist in full, unrationed air for everyone who needed it. 4 ships. For 11 people. In the wrong sector, on no one's roster, and the answer had been 4 ships anyway, and a hospital, and a lieutenant who wanted the procedure on record. She had changed 3 toggles and a frequency selector. The rest had been Earth's answer to whether it would come, which as it turned out had never actually been a question.